on Thursday, December 27th, 1883. Okay. A man may lead the life of a householder after attaining knowledge, but he must attain knowledge first. If the milk of the mind is kept in the water of the world, they get mixed. Therefore, he should turn the milk into curd and extract butter from it by churning it in solitude. Then he may keep the butter in the water of the world. Therefore, you see, spiritual discipline is necessary. When the ashwatha tree is a mere sapling, it must be closed about by a fence. Otherwise, cattle will eat it. But the fence may be taken away when the trunk goes thick and strong. Then even an elephant tied to a tree cannot harm it. Therefore, at the beginning, the aspirant should go into solitude now and then. Spiritual discipline is necessary. You want to eat rice. Suppose you sit down somewhere and say, wood contains fire, and fire cooks rice. Can saying it cook the rice? You must get 2 pieces of wood by rubbing them together and bring out the fire. By eating siddhi, one becomes intoxicated and feels happy. But suppose you haven't eaten the stuff or done anything else with it. You simply sit down and mutter, siddhi, siddhi. Will that intoxicate you or make you happy? You may learn a great deal from books, but it's all futile unless you have love for God, and it's all futile if you have no love for God and no desire to realize Him. A mere pundit, without discrimination and renunciation, has his eyes' attention fixed on lust and greed. The vulture soars very high, but his eyes are fixed on the charnel pit. That alone is knowledge through which one is able to know God. All else is futile. All else is futile. Well, what is your idea about God? Sheesh, sir, I feel there is an all-knowing person. We get an indication of his knowledge by looking at his creation. Let me give you an illustration. God has made devices to keep fish and other aquatic animals alive in cold regions. As the water grows colder, it gradually shrinks. But the amazing thing is that just before turning into ice, the water becomes light and expands. In the freezing cold, fish can easily live in the water of a lake. The surface of the lake may be frozen, but the water below it is all liquid. If a very cold breeze blows, it's obstructed by the ice. The water below remains warm. Master, that God exists may be known by looking at the universe, but it is one thing to hear of God, another thing to see God, and still another thing to talk to God. Some have heard of milk, some have seen it, and some again have tasted it. You feel happy when you see milk. You are nourished and strengthened when you drink it. You will get peace of mind only when you have seen God. You will enjoy bliss and gain strength only when you have talked to Him. Shrish, we do not have time to pray to God. Master with a smile. That is true. Nothing comes to pass except at the right time. Going to bed, a child said to his mother, "Mother, please wake me up when I feel the call of nature." "My son," said the mother, "that urge itself will wake you up. I don't have to wake you." It is all decided beforehand by God what each one shall receive. A mother-in-law used to measure rice with a dish for her daughter-in-law, but it was not enough for them. For her daughters-in-law, but it was not enough for them. One day the dish was broken, and that made the girls happy, but the mother-in-law said to them, "Children, you may shout and dance, but I can measure the rice with the palm of my hand." To Shrish, surrender everything at the feet of God. What else can you do? Give Him the power of attorney. Let Him do what He thinks. Let Him do whatever He thinks best. If you rely on a great man, He will never injure you. It is no doubt necessary to practice spiritual discipline, but there are 2 kinds of aspirants. The nature of the one kind is that it's like the young monkey, and the nature of the other kind is that of the kitten. The young monkey, with great exertion, somehow clings to its mother. Likewise, there are some aspirants who think that in order to realize God, they must repeat His name a certain number of times, meditate on Him for a certain period, and practice a certain amount of austerity. An aspirant of this kind makes his own efforts to catch hold of God. But the kitten of itself cannot cling to its mother. It lies on the ground and cries, mew, mew. It leaves everything to its mother. The mother cat sometimes puts it on a bed, sometimes on the roof behind a pile of wood. She carries the kitten in her mouth hither and thither. The kitten doesn't know how to cling to the mother. Likewise, there's some aspirants who cannot practice spiritual discipline by calculating about japa or period of meditation. All they do is cry to God with yearning hearts. God hears their cry and cannot keep himself away. He reveals himself to them. At noon, the host wished to feed the master and the devotees. Sri Ramakrishna was smilingly pacing the room. Now and then he exchanged a few words with the musician. It is God alone who is both the instrument and the cause. Duryodhana said to Krishna, O Lord, thou art seated in my heart. I act as thou makest me act. Master with a smile. That is true. It is God alone who acts through us. He is the doer, undoubtedly, and man is his instrument. But it is also true that an action cannot fail to produce its result. Your stomach will certainly burn if you eat a hot chili. It is God who has ordained that chili will burn your stomach. If you commit a crime, you must bear its fruit. But one who has attained perfection, realized God, cannot commit sin. An expert singer cannot sing a false note. A man with a trained voice sings the notes correctly, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. The meal was ready. The master and the devotees went to the inner court, where they were treated to a generous feast. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the master was seated again in Ishan's drawing room with M and Shrish. He resumed his conversation with Shrish. Master, what is your attitude toward God? I am he, or master and servant? For a devotee, for a householder, it's very good to look on God as the master. The householder is conscious of doing the duties of life himself. Under such conditions, how can he say, I am he? To him who says, I am he, the world appears to be a dream. His mind, his body, even his ego are dreams to him. Therefore, he cannot perform his worldly duties. So it's very good for the householder to look upon himself as the servant and on God as the master. Hanuman had the attitude of a servant. He said to Rama, O Rama, sometimes I meditate on you as the whole and myself as a part. Sometimes I feel that you are the master and I am the servant. But when I have the knowledge of the reality, I see that I am you and you are I. In the state of perfect knowledge, one may feel I am he, but that is far beyond the ordinary man's experience. Shrish, that is true, sir. The attitude of a servant relieves a man of all his worries. The servant depends entirely upon the master. A dog is devoted to its master. It depends upon him and is at peace. Master, well, what suits your taste, God with form or the formless reality? But to tell you the truth, he who is formless is also endowed with form. To his bhaktas, he reveals himself as having a form. It is like a great ocean, an infinite expanse of water, without any trace of shore. Here and there, some of the waters become frozen. Intense cold has turned it into ice. Just so, under the cooling influence, so to speak, of the bhakta's love, the infinite appears to take a form. Again, the ice melts when the sun rises. It becomes water as before. Just so, one who follows the path of knowledge, the path of discrimination, does not see the form of God anymore. To him, everything is formless. The ice melts into the formless water with the rise of the sun of knowledge. But mark this, form and formlessness belong to one and the same reality. At dusk, the master was ready to start for Dakshineshwar. He stood on the south porch of the drawing room, talking to Ishan. Someone remarked that the chanting of God's holy name did not always produce results. Ishan said, How can you say that? The seed of an ashwata tree are no doubt tiny, but in them lies the germs of big trees. It may take a very long time for them to grow. Yes, said the master, it takes a long time to see the effect. Next to Ishan's was his father-in-law's house. Sri Ramakrishna stood at the door of the house, ready to get into the carriage. Ishan and his friends stood around to bid him adieu. Sri Ramakrishna said to Ishan, "You are living in the world as a mudfish lives in the mud. It lives in the mud, but the body is not stained." There are both vidya and avidya, that's knowledge and ignorance, in this world of Maya. Who may be called a Paramahamsa? One who, like a swan, can take the milk from a mixture of milk and water, leaving aside the water. One who, like an ant, can take the sugar from a mixture of sugar and sand and leave aside the sand. It was evening. The master stopped at Ram's house, and on his way to Dakshineshwar, he was taken to the drawing room, and there he engaged in conversation with Mahendra Goswami. Mahendra belonged to the Vaishnava sect and was Ram's neighbor. Sri Ramakrishna was fond of him. "Master, the worshippers of Vishnu and the worshippers of Shakti will all ultimately reach one and the same goal. The ways may be different. The true Vaishnavas do not criticize the Shaktas." Goswami smiling, "Shiva and Parvati are our mother and father." To Sri Ramakrishna, out of a stock of a dozen English words, said sweetly, "Thank you." Then he added, "Yes, father and mother." Goswami, "Besides, it is a sin to criticize anyone, especially a devotee of God. All sins may be forgiven, but not the sin of criticizing a devotee." Master, but this idea of sin does not by any means affect all. For instance, the Ishvara Kodis and such as incarnations of God are above sin. Sri Chaitanya is an example. A child walking along a narrow ridge holds to his father because he may slip into a ditch. But that can never happen if the father holds the child by the hand. Listen, I prayed to the Divine Mother for pure love. I said to her, "Here is thy righteousness, here is thy unrighteousness. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here is thy purity, here is thy impurity. Take them both and give me pure love for thee. Here is thy virtue, here is thy vice. Take them both and give me pure love for thee." Goswami, "Yes, sir, that is right." Master, "You should undoubtedly bow before all views. But there is a thing called unswerving devotion to one ideal. True, you should salute everyone, but you must love one ideal with your whole soul. That is unswerving devotion. Hanuman could not take delight in any other form other than Rama. The gopis had such single-minded love for the cowherd Krishna of Vrindavan that they did not care to see the turbaned Krishna of Dwaraka. A wife may serve her husband's brothers by fetching water or in other ways, but she cannot serve them the way that she does her husband. With him, she has a special relationship. Ram treated the master to sweets. Sri Ramakrishna was ready to start for Dakshineshwar. He put on a woolen shawl and a cap and got into the carriage with him and the other devotees. Ram and his friends saluted the master. And that's the end of that day. Any questions or comments about that section? Nothing.
I have a question of sorts.
Sure, Ganga.
About the sin topic. I'd like to hear all of his different views on sin. And I mean, as far as we know, we aren't Ishvara Kotis, but I know that he says this one very good quote about if you repeatedly call yourself a sinner you do become.
Yep.
Can you give some light to that quote? I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and I'm not sure I understand necessarily how to apply it.
If we keep ruminating on the things that we've done wrong and say, I'm a sinner, I've done bad, it'll be all, what we make deeper impressions in our minds. So the impression that we already have, the more we think about it and the more we perseverate on it, and the more we identify with it, the more we're likely to do the same thing again, because that's been our identification. The Sri Ramakrishna advised, when you do make a mistake, say, I will never do it again. I will really try never to do it again, and pray with your whole heart, forgive me, I pray I never do that again. And then really try to keep to it, rather than going over and over in your mind like, I'm a sinner, I did this, I did that, because it just makes the impression deeper, so that when anything new comes in, it's more likely to go down into that established groove of, I am a sinner, I'm a bad person. It's a very, very harmful thing. You also have to remember that the idea of sin or papa in the Hindu tradition is very different than the idea of sin in the Christian tradition. Because sin in the Christian tradition is something you are born with, and it is a human tendency. In the Hindu tradition, papa is contrasted with punya, which means basically it means sin or merit and demerit. It's like things that it's not intrinsic to your soul. It's not intrinsic to who you are. There are mistakes that we've made, and there's and on the other hand, there's things that we do that are right, that are good, what they call punya, things that give us spiritual merit, so to speak. They're often contrasted one and the other. So it isn't like the things that we do wrong, the things that are not right, are not intrinsic to who we are as beings. We're all pure, immortal. Our very nature is pure. And whatever comes over us, ignorance, it's a temporary covering over our real nature. But when people hear the word sin in the English gospel, they often hearken back to the Judeo-Christian thing, which is a very different concept than the Indian tradition. Is that helpful, Ganga? Did that answer anything?
Yes, absolutely. I liked the comparison between the Hindu and Christian perspectives because I definitely grew up with the second one ingrained in me for a while.
Swami Prabhavananda said the hardest thing that he had to deal with when he came to this country was guilt, because of this whole harping on, I did this, I did that, I'm a bad person, and it's very damaging. It weakens us. So to think of ourselves as what our true nature is, that I'm pure, I'm eternal, I'm free, I'm stainless. All these things are temporary aberrations, but they're not who I really am. So I think it's really because it weakens us. To think of ourselves as lowly sinners makes us weak, and when you're weak, you tend to fall more often. To really emphasize our real nature and our own inner strength and inner divinity. Okay, let's move on. Thanks for the question, Ganga. Let's move on to Saturday, December 29th, 1883. It was the day of the new moon, auspicious for the worship of the Divine Mother. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sri Ramakrishna got into a carriage to visit the temple of Kali at Kalighat. He intended to stop at Adhar's house on the way, since Adhar was to accompany him to the temple. While the carriage was waiting near the north porch of the master's room, M went to the master and said, "Sir, may I go along with you?" Master, why? M, I should like to visit my home in Calcutta. Sri Ramakrishna reflected a minute and said, "Must you go home? Why? You are quite all right here." See, M was taking a retreat with Sri Ramakrishna. He was staying away from his family and his work and all that. He was just doing a spiritual retreat, so to speak. M wanted to see his people for a few hours, but evidently the master did not approve. That is the end of that day. That's a very short one. Okay. Sunday, December 30th, 1883. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, while M was walking up and down under a tree, a devotee came to him and said that the master had sent for him. M went to Sri Ramakrishna's room and found a number of devotees there. He saluted the master. Ram, Kedar, and others had arrived from Calcutta. Ram had brought with him the Vedantist monk whom the master had visited near his garden a few days earlier. On that occasion, Sri Ramakrishna had asked him to bring the sadhu to Dakshineshwar. The monk was sitting on a small couch with the master. They were talking happily in Hindustani, or what we would call Hindi today. Master, what do you feel about all this? Monk, it's all like a dream. Master, Brahman alone is real and the world illusory. Well, sir, what is Brahman? Monk, Brahman is sound. It is Om. Master, but there must be something indicated by the sound. Isn't that so? Monk, that itself is the thing indicated as well as the indicator. At these words, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi and sat motionless. The monk and the devotees looked wonderingly at him in his ecstatic condition. Kedar said to the monk, "Look at him, sir. This is samadhi." The monk had read of samadhi, but had never seen it before. After a few minutes, the master gradually began to come down to the normal plane of consciousness. He said to the Divine Mother, "Mother, I want to be normal. Please don't make me unconscious. I should like to talk to the sadhu about Satchidananda. Mother, I want to be Mary, talking about Satchidananda." The monk was amazed to see the master's condition and to hear these words. Sri Ramakrishna said to him, "Please do away with your I am he. Let us now keep I and thou to enjoy the fun." A little later, the master was walking on the Panchavati with Ram, Kedar, M, and a few other devotees. Master to Kedar with a smile, What did you think of the sadhu?" Kedar, "It is all dry knowledge. The pot has been put on the fire, yet there's no rice in it." Master, "That may be true, but he has renounced everything. He who has renounced the world has already made great progress. The sadhu belongs to the stage of a beginner. Nothing can be achieved without the realization of God. When a person is intoxicated with the ecstatic love of God, they don't take delight in anything else. Then, cherish my precious mother Shama tenderly within, O mind. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude." Kedar repeated the words of a song in keeping with the master's feeling. "How shall I open up my heart, O friend? It is forbidden me to speak. I'm about to die for lack of a kindred soul to understand my misery." Sri Ramakrishna returned to his room. After about 4 o'clock, the door of the Kali temple was opened, and the master walked to the temple with the monk. M accompanied them. Entering the inner chamber, the master prostrated himself reverently before the image. The monk, with folded hands, also bowed his head repeatedly before Kali. "Master, what do you think of Kali?" Monk, with devotion, "Kali is supreme." Master, "Kali and Brahman are identical. Is that not so?" Monk, "As long as one's mind is turned to the outer world, one must accept Kali. As long as a man sees the outer world and discriminates between good and evil, he must accept good and reject evil." That goes along with our talk about sin. "To be sure, all names and forms are illusory, but as long as the mind sees the outer world, the aspirant must give up lust. The ideas of good and evil are applied to one who is still a student on the path. Otherwise, they will stray from the path of righteousness." Thus conversing, the monk and the master and the monk returned from the temple. Master to M, "Did you notice how the sadhu bowed before Kali?" M, "Yes, sir." And then we go on to Monday, December 31st, 1883. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the master was sitting in his room with M, Rakhal, Latu, Harish, and other devotees. Addressing M and Balaram, the master said, "Haladhari followed the path of knowledge. Day and night he used to study the Upanishads, the Adhyatma Ramayana, and similar books on Vedanta. He would turn up his nose at the mention of the forms of God. Once I ate from the leaf plates of the beggars. At this, Haladhari said to me, 'How will you be able to marry your children?' I said, 'You rascal! Shall I ever have children? May your mouth that repeats words from the Gita and the Vedanta be blighted.' Just fancy, he declared the world was illusory and again would meditate in the temple of Vishnu with a turned-up nose." In the evening, Balaram and the other devotees returned from Calcutta. The master remained in his room, absorbed in contemplation of the Divine Mother. After a while, the sweet music of the evening worship in the temples was heard. A little later, the master began to talk to the mother in a tender voice that touched the heart of M, who was seated on the floor. After repeating Hari Om, Om, the master said, "Mother, don't make me unconscious with the knowledge of Brahman. Mother, I don't want Brahmagyana. I want to be merry. I want to play." Again he said, "Mother, I don't know the Vedanta. Mother, I don't even care to know. The Vedas and the Vedanta remain so far below when thou art realized. O Divine Mother." Then he said, "O Krishna, I shall say to thee, eat, my child, take this, my child. O Krishna, I shall say to thee, my child, thou hast assumed this body for my sake." And that is the end of that day, which is great timing. Any questions on this section? John?
Actually, one left over from the last one. What's Paramahansa in Vedanta?
Paramahamsa. What is Paramahamsa? A highly realized soul who's able to live in the world but not be affected by it. A very highly enlightened being.
Okay, and so when you were talking like with Gandhi's question, what you just read, the notion that some people still have to deal with good and evil. When we pray, or at least the prayer that I have before I do my japa, says something about remove all my karmas, good or bad. So in other words, we're in a different place when we get closer to God. Good and bad don't have any meaning.
Well, once we are aware of our divine nature, as Sri Ramakrishna said, a trained musician can never hit a false note, or as he often said, a trained dancer cannot take a false step. But until we have that highest realization, it's very easy for us to take a false step. So
Okay.
we may realize that at the highest stage of realization, we're beyond good and evil because we couldn't do something evil because it wouldn't actually be possible. But we're not there. So we have to really deal with the reality of where we are now, which is why the sadhu was mentioning Sri Ramakrishna. They have to avoid evil and do good until we're totally free from ignorance. As long as we're free from ignorance, there's every chance that we'll take a false step.
How will we know that?
Well, you will know that because you'll see the world and others in an entirely different way. You'll see yourself in a different way. And you will be overwhelmed with love and joy that doesn't diminish no matter what happens to you or anybody else.
Thank you.
And you'll be living in complete and total peace. And your peace would be palpable to other people. It's a rarefied state, but when you meet people like that, it makes it really, the effects are amazing. Amazing. So we're all kind of on the path. We're all trying to get there bit by bit. But whatever steps we make is going in the right direction, no matter what. Even if we don't attain the very, very highest state, just as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, even a little of spiritual practice that's never lost, and even that helps remove what he called the great fear. It removes the fear of death, removes the fear of so much. It gives us great peace, even a little bit. So that's always the encouragement that we're given. Any other questions? Okay. Sunanda, I remembered. We met in Santa Barbara first, and then we connected in San Francisco.
Okay, good.
We're going back 5 decades here. Okay. All right, so tomorrow we will have a lecture by Pravrajika Krishnaprana on best friend, worst enemy. Just exactly what we were talking about right now. So that will be great. At 11 o'clock. Wednesday, there will be a reading at 5 p.m. right here, Memories of a Loving Soul, Swami Premananda, the book by Swami Prabhavananda. It's just been wonderful, so I hope you can all attend that. It's been really great to listen to it. The following Saturday, there will be another reading from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Okay, and hope you have a good week, and I hope it stays cool for everybody. Hope it's not too cool your way, Elizabeth. Okay, we'll conclude with chant. Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om Tat Sat, Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Jai Ma.
Jai Ma, Jai Ma.